There's a strange contradiction at the heart of K-pop. The industry is built on perfection, flawless idols, flawless choreography, and flawless branding. But the man who shaped some of its biggest stars built his empire on something far less polished. Yang Hyun-suk didn't dominate K-pop by following the rules. He dominated it by breaking them and somehow turning chaos into a billion-dollar machine. Today, we're unpacking how he did it and why his influence still shapes the industry even when he's not in the spotlight. To understand Yang Hyun-suk, you have to understand the world he stepped into. K-pop wasn't always a global force. In the 1990s, it was a small, emerging scene, a mix of Western influence, local culture, and raw experimentation. Most companies were trying to copy each other, chasing the same formula. But Yang Hyun-suk saw something different. He believed K-pop could be bigger, louder, bolder, and more global. He believed he could build the company that would lead that transformation. That company became YG Entertainment. This is the story of how he built it and how he used it to dominate an entire industry. The rise. Before he was a CEO, Yang Hyun-suk was a performer, a dancer, not a member of Seo Taiji and Boys, the group that changed Korean music forever. They didn't just break the rules. They rewrote the entire playbook. Hip-hop, R&B, and Western-type beats. With this type of mix, they brought a new sound to Korea. When the group exploded in popularity, Young learned something crucial. Culture moves fastest when you stop trying to control it. That idea would become the foundation of YG. In 1996, he founded YG Entertainment with one goal: to create artists who didn't look manufactured but felt real. While other companies polished their idols into perfection, YG did the opposite. He embraced edge, he embraced attitude, he embraced imperfection, and it worked. YG's early artists Jinu Sean and One Time didn't just make music, they built a culture. This was the beginning of the YG identity, raw, rebellious, and impossible to ignore. But Young wasn't satisfied with being different. He wanted to be dominant, and that ambition would push YG into its next era. The challenge. Building a brand is one thing. Building an empire is another. By the early 2000s, SM Entertainment dominated the industry. JYP was rising fast. Both companies had systems, training programs, and global ambitions. YG was still small, still niche, still seen as the hip-hop company, not a mainstream powerhouse. And Yang Hyun-suk faced a brutal truth. If YG didn't evolve, it would be left behind. This is where most founders fail. They cling to the identity that made them successful. They refuse to adapt. They protect the past instead of building the future. But Young didn't make that mistake. He made a decision that would change everything. YG would stop being a music label and become a cultural engine. This shift would define the next decade. But evolution comes with risk. Young was about to take the biggest risk of his career. The turning point. The turning point came with one group, Big Bang. They weren't just idols. They were personalities. They were creators. They were allowed to write, produce, experiment, fail, and reinvent. This was unheard of in K-pop. Most companies controlled everything. YG did the opposite. And the result? Big Bang didn't just succeed, they exploded with a big bang. They became one of the most influential K-pop groups of all time, which makes them the kings of K-pop. But the real turning point wasn't their success. That it was what their success proved. When you give artists freedom, they create culture, not just content. This became the YG formula. And it worked again with 2NE1, and again with Winner, and again with Icon, and again with Blackpink. YG wasn't just producing groups, it was producing movements. But behind the scenes, Young was building something even bigger, a strategy that would redefine the entire industry. The strategy. So, how did Yang Hyun-suk dominate the industry? Here's the strategy, the one most people never see. 1. Scarcity. YG didn't flood the market with content. They released less, but made every release an event. Scarcity creates demand. Demand creates hype. Hype creates dominance. 2. Artist autonomy. While other companies controlled everything, YG gave artists room to breathe. Autonomy creates authenticity. Authenticity creates loyalty. Loyalty creates longevity. 3. Global positioning. YG didn't chase Korea. YG chased the world. Western producers, global tours, international branding. YG isn't just a Korean company. It is a global entertainment machine. 4. Visual identity. Black and gold. Minimalist. Luxury. Street. Urban. YG didn't just build artists. It builds brands. 5. Controlled mystery. YG mastered silence. No overexposure. No constant updates. No endless teasers. Mystery creates curiosity. Curiosity drives clicks. Clicks drive culture. 6. The YG aura. This is the intangible part the part fans feel but can't explain. YG artists don't look like they're performing. They look like they're living. That authenticity became the company's superpower. The outcome? By the mid-2010s, YG wasn't just a label. It was a global force. Big Bang became legends. 2NE1 became icons. Blackpink became the biggest girl group in the world. Yang Hyun-suk became the architect behind one of the most influential entertainment empires on the planet. But dominance always comes with a cost. The same boldness that built YG would, eventually, create its biggest challenges. Still, one thing is undeniable. Yang Hyun-suk changed K-pop forever. The principle. In the end, Yang Hyun-suk didn't dominate K-pop because he was the most polished, or the most traditional, or the most predictable. He dominates because he understands something deeper. People don't follow perfection. They follow ambition. He built YG Entertainment on a simple principle. If you create something real, the world will follow. And whether you're building a business, a brand, or a dream, that principle still holds. Because in a world full of noise, the people who stand out are the ones who dare to be different. The ones who are willing to be misunderstood in the short term to be unforgettable in the long term. And if there's one thing Yang Hyun-suk understood better than almost anyone, it's that difference is a strategy. He didn't try to copy SM, but he also didn't try to out-polish JYP. He also didn't even try to chase every trend the industry threw at him. Instead, he built a world of his own, with its own rules. A world where attitude mattered as much as choreography, where charisma mattered as much as perfection, where rawness could be just as powerful as refinement. That was his advantage. Not money, not connections, not luck, a point of view. And here's the part most people miss. A point of view is more valuable than talent, more valuable than resources, more valuable than opportunity. Because a point of view creates identity. Identity creates loyalty, and loyalty creates empires. That's why YG artists didn't just have fans, they had believers. People who felt something deeper than admiration. People who connected to the attitude, the energy, the rebellion. People who saw themselves in the music. That's the real power of a brand. Not the logo, not the colors, not the marketing. The feeling it gives people. And whether you're running a company, building a channel, or trying to change your life, that's the lesson you can't ignore. Because the world doesn't reward the safest idea. It rewards the boldest one. The idea that scares you a little. The idea that feels too different. The idea that doesn't fit the template. That's the idea that becomes a movement. And that's why Yang Hyun-suk's story matters, not because he was perfect, not because he was flawless, but because he committed to a vision so strongly that the industry had no choice but to react. Some loved him, some hated him, but no one ignored him. And in business, in creativity, in life, being impossible to ignore is one of the greatest advantages you can have. So whatever you're building, your brand, your craft, your future, don't aim to fit in. Aim to stand out. Aim to be remembered. Aim to build something that feels like you. Because the people who change industries aren't the ones who follow the blueprint. They're the ones who create their own. And the world always remembers the ones who dare to be different. But here's the part most people never think about. Being different isn't just a creative choice. It's a risk decision, because the moment you decide not to follow the formula, that you also decide to walk away from the safety that comes with it. If YG had failed, people wouldn't have called Yang Hyun-suk a visionary. They would have called him reckless. That's the thin line every founder, every creator, and every leader walks. From the outside, success looks obvious. But from the inside, it feels like doubt, pressure, and constant uncertainty. There were moments where YG was one bad decision away from collapsing under its own weight. Moments where the controversies were louder than the music. Moments where the industry turned its back. But that's the reality of building anything that matters. You don't get to choose the pressure. You only get to choose what you do with it. Some people fold. Some people freeze. And some people, like Yang Hyun-suk, double down on the identity they've built. That doesn't make him a hero. It doesn't make him a villain either. It makes him what most powerful people really are, complicated. A man who built opportunities for others while also holding more control than anyone should. A man who changed the sound of a generation while being at the center of scandals that will follow his name forever. And that's another lesson hidden inside this story. Power is never clean. The higher you climb, the more every decision has a cost. To your reputation, to your relationships, to the people who depend on you. So when you look at someone like Yang Hyun-suk, you're not just looking at success. You're looking at the weight that comes with it. And that's something worth remembering when you say you want to dominate your industry. Because domination isn't just money, views, or influence. It's responsibility. It's pressure. It's living with the consequences of every move you make. So maybe the real question isn't, do you want to be as big as YG? Maybe the real question is, are you willing to carry what comes with that level of power? If the answer is yes, then this story isn't just entertainment for you. It's a blueprint and a warning at the same time. This is a reminder that your vision will set you apart, your brand will attract your people, and your decisions will define your legacy. Whether your empire is a company, a channel, or a one-person brand, the principle is the same. Know what you stand for, accept the weight that comes with it, and build something so distinct that the world can't confuse you with anyone else. Because in every industry, from K-pop to business to whatever you're building right now, there's always room for one more person who's brave enough to change the rules. And now, the only real question left is, will that be you?